The hangar stretched wide and cold, a metallic cathedral echoing with the distant hum of generators, rolling tool carts, and the muted chatter of mechanics preparing aircraft for the day's flights. But all of that background noise seemed to shrink beneath the sharp, impatient tap of Cassandra Vale's heels on the polished concrete floor. She stood with the posture of a queen irritated by the incompetence of her court, shoulders back, eyebrows perfectly arched, lips shaped into a line so fine it could cut steel. Her private jet, silver and pristine, rested behind her like a loyal beast waiting for command, yet her gaze was fixed not on the aircraft, but on the man who had been sent to inspect it. "You've got to be kidding me," she muttered, loud enough for every mechanic within 10 meters to hear. The man in question, Elias Wolf, appeared oblivious, or at least, impressively disciplined. Dressed in a worn gray jumpsuit marked by oil stains and years of labor, he carried no air of importance, only quiet steadiness. His dark hair was tied back loosely, and his face, lined, weathered, but not old, spoke of responsibilities that stretched far beyond the hangar walls. His hands, strong and calloused, lifted a toolbox with the familiarity of someone who didn't just use tools, but understood them. Cassandra scoffed. "I requested an aviation engineer with elite certification. Someone from your team assured me I'd have the best. And instead, I get a car mechanic." A few of the nearby mechanics exchanged looks, but no one dared speak. Elias didn't rise to the insult, didn't defend himself, didn't even glance up. He simply placed his toolbox beside the jet and began rolling up his sleeves. Cassandra's growing irritation colored her voice as she added, "Honestly, this is insulting. My jet isn't some taxi cab." Still, Elias remained silent. Not because he agreed or because her words cut him, but because experience had taught him that people like her, with their high walls built from money and pride, often needed to talk themselves empty before they could listen. When he finally spoke, his tone was gentle yet firm. "Ma'am, your jet won't take off until I clear it. Let me do my job." Cassandra narrowed her eyes at him, analyzing his lack of reaction as though it were a challenge. "Do it fast," she snapped. "I have a board meeting in Singapore and I refuse to be late because someone who works on pickup trucks is pretending to understand aircraft engines." Without a word, Elias crouched near the landing gear and ran his fingers across a joint. His movement wasn't rushed or nervous, it was calm, intentional, practiced. Cassandra rolled her eyes dramatically. "This is unbelievable. My jet's life depends on a guy whose biggest accomplishment is probably rotating tires." A few mechanics flinched. Elias didn't. He stood, moved to the underbelly, and tapped gently on a panel. Tap, tap. Then he leaned in, listening intently. Cassandra frowned. "Are you seriously tapping my jet?" Elias didn't answer. He moved to the engine intake next, running his fingertips along its rim before stepping back and tilting his head slightly, as though listening to something invisible. Cassandra let out a frustrated sigh. "Someone please get me the actual engineer." But before she could finish, Elias pressed a button on the side panel that released a diagnostic display. Numbers and readings flashed across the screen, reflecting in his steady eyes. Cassandra folded her arms. "Fantastic. He knows how to push buttons." He ignored her. Instead, he closed his eyes for a moment, breathing slowly, and then he did something that made Cassandra's mouth tighten with disbelief. He placed his ear against the engine panel. "Is he listening to the engine?" Cassandra whispered to no one in particular. "What is this, medieval medicine for jets?" No one answered her, because everyone knew something she didn't. Elias wasn't average, wasn't ordinary, and certainly wasn't a car mechanic. As he stepped back, Elias's brow tightened ever so slightly, a tiny crease, but enough to make every mechanic watching shift nervously. "There's a vibration pattern that shouldn't be there," he said quietly. Cassandra, arms crossed and entirely unimpressed, snapped, "Meaning what?" "Meaning your jet stays grounded until I open this engine housing." She laughed. Loud, sharp, mocking. "Absolutely not. My personal team serviced the jet last week. Everything is perfect." "You're mistaken." Elias's voice was maddeningly calm. "If I'm mistaken, you'll be in the air in 10 minutes. If I'm right," he met her eyes for the first time, "you'd be falling out of it in 10. A ripple of unease swept through the hangar. Cassandra felt something, a flicker of doubt, but refused to show it. Fine, she said, stepping aside with a huff. But when you find nothing, I want your supervisor here immediately. Elias went to work, removing bolts and lifting the panel with expert precision. And the moment the interior mechanics of the engine were revealed, Cassandra's breath hitched. A hairline fracture traced across one of the coils, so faint it could barely be seen even up close. What is that? Cassandra whispered, stepping forward. Elias traced the fracture with a finger, nodding to himself. It's just like the T-38 engines. Cassandra's head snapped toward him. The what? Elias didn't hear her, or maybe he didn't chose not to respond. But one older technician did, and his face paled. T-38, the Air Force trainer jets. Cassandra swiveled toward the mechanic. Military jets. Elias continued examining the engine as he quietly answered, I worked on them for 14 years. Cassandra stared. Why are you here? Fixing corporate planes. Elias paused. When he spoke, his voice held a softness that didn't match his hardened exterior. Because my daughter needs me home. Deployments don't allow that. Cassandra's lips parted. Her arrogance faltered. Her assumptions crumbled. Because the man she mocked, dismissed as some uneducated grease worker, had just saved her life using experience she couldn't begin to comprehend. And yet, she didn't know the real extent of what he could do. Not yet. Part 2. The hangar felt different now. Not colder or warmer, but charged, like someone had flipped a switch in Cassandra's perception and flooded the space with a clarity she wasn't prepared for. The mechanics who had earlier avoided her gaze now watched Elias with reverence, as if witnessing an artist at work. Cassandra found herself staring, unable to look away, as Elias opened a red case marked by faded military stencils. The tools inside were unlike anything she had seen. Custom-modified wrenches, ultra-sensitive resonance sensors, instruments that looked like hybrids of engineering equipment and medical devices. How did you find that crack? She finally asked, her voice stripped of the superiority it once carried. Elias picked up a slender metal rod with an oddly shaped end. Auditory mapping, he said. Jets speak. Most people never learn how to listen. Cassandra frowned. Listen, as in, you can hear when something's wrong. He nodded as he fitted the tool against a joint on the engine. Every machine has a rhythm. A healthy engine sounds like a symphony. When something's off, even slightly, the rhythm breaks. Sensors don't always catch fractures this small, but the sound does. She stared. For Cassandra, engines were numbers, performance charts, fuel consumption stats. She had never thought of them as something that could be heard. So you can detect defects by sound alone? She asked softly. Not just detect, he replied. I can identify the location within a few inches. Cassandra's mouth parted in astonishment. It sounded like a skill no human should realistically possess. That's impossible. Elias didn't argue or boast. Most think so, he said, tightening a screw with precise movement. Cassandra watched him fix the fractured coil, stabilizing it with microscopic detail. It was surgical, almost hypnotic. His fingers moved with certainty, no hesitation, no second guessing. Where did you learn this? She asked. Military projects, he answered. Classified ones. She took a sharp breath. Classified. Elias didn't look up. I can't talk about the specifics. Cassandra felt something new swirl inside her, respect wrapped in awe. Then, unexpectedly, guilt. Because the man whose skill surpassed every engineer she'd hired, was the same man she had mocked only minutes earlier. Elias reassembled the housing with near ritualistic precision. Not a single bolt was tightened out of sequence. Not a single tool misplaced. When he stepped back, the engine looked untouched, but felt, somehow, renewed. He ran a diagnostic scan, scanned the results, and nodded. Your jet is safe to fly, he said. Cassandra exhaled, the weight of what could have happened settling into her bones. Elias, she began. He looked at her. Thank you, she whispered. He nodded politely, but she looked away, embarrassed. And, I'm sorry, for earlier. I shouldn't have spoken to you like that. Elias gave a faint smile, not bitter, just understanding. I've heard worse. But you shouldn't have to, she replied instantly. Especially not from me. A flicker crossed his eyes. Surprise, maybe appreciation. Apology accepted, he said quietly. She hesitated, studying him with a new lens. Then she said, my company works on advanced aeronautics research. We collaborate with high-level engineers, people who would be stunned by your skill set. Elias blinked. I'm not looking for long hours or travel. It wouldn't require that, she said quickly, almost eager. Remote consultation, high pay, flexible schedule. You'd choose your hours. Elias paused. Cassandra saw the way he softened, the way the idea tugged at something deep in him. A better life for his daughter. A chance to use the skills he had sacrificed a career for. Cassandra extended a business card. If you ever want more than this hangar, call me. He looked at the card, then her, then back at the jet. My shift isn't over, he said quietly. I still have 3 more planes to inspect. Cassandra blinked. Somehow, that humble dedication made her chest tighten. She smiled, softly, genuinely, for the first time that morning. She stepped back as Elias returned to his work, watching him with a fascination she couldn't hide. This man had humbled her without trying, taught her without speaking much, and saved her life without expecting gratitude. As she boarded her jet, she looked back one more time at him. This quiet, brilliant single dad whose hidden skill had rewritten her entire understanding of expertise. I'll be thinking about you, she whispered to herself before the door closed. And though Elias didn't look up, she wondered if, with his extraordinary senses, he somehow heard her anyway.